Third pick in the 2018 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Sam Darnold, quarterback, USC.
A sigh of relief from Sam Darnold, who's going West Coast, East Coast. Sam Darnold only 2 years at USC, but was so impressive when he played as a freshman.
The New York Jets got the best quarterback, in my opinion, at number 3. They won the draft.
On the clock, that's gonna do it. The Seahawks soar to Super Bowl 60.
It should have been me, not him. It's not fair.
Well, he did it. The man that was drafted by the Jets in 2018, 3rd overall, and was supposed to be their savior. What did he do this season? Oh, nothing. He just led his team to the #1 seed, exercised his playoff demons from last season, and led his team to the Super Bowl. In fact, he's the first of his draft class to make the Super Bowl. So yes, Sam Darnold did it. And I'm happy for him. Except for the part where he did it for a team that wasn't my New York Jets. But what if it didn't have to be that way? What if in some alternate universe, the Jets never traded Sam Darnold? Think of all the possibilities. What could have been? You gotta ask yourself, if he stayed, what happens with the draft picks? Would the Jets have a better record? Would they surround him with better talent? What would have happened with the coaches? Or even the front office? What would have happened if the Jets simply kept Sam Darnold? But before I get into all of that, if you're new to this channel, I usually give my thoughts on anything and everything in the world of the NBA, the NFL, and sometimes the WWE. So if that's your vibe, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit that notification bell, as it really does help this channel grow. Now without further ado, let's get back to the video. Now I promise we'll get into the fun stuff soon. But before we could talk about fantasy, we gotta take a look back at reality. The reality as to why Sam Darnold was traded in the first place. Now, did the Jets fail Sam Darnold? Yes. And if you want to know more about that and other failures that the Jets had since 2011, click the video on your screen. But yeah, the Jets did Sam Darnold no favors. Whether it's the lack of talent, or questionable moves by the GM, or outright bad coaching hires. The fact is, they could have done a much better job when it came to developing him. But as much as I hate to admit it, Sam Darnold did have his flaws. If you remember, in the 2020 season, he only threw for 9 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. And I will always admit that that 2020 team was devoid of talent, but the fact also remains that Sam Darnold did not take care of the football and made questionable decisions as a quarterback. Another issue was his durability. See, Sam never played a full season of football under his time with the Jets, and even afterwards. In his first 2 seasons, he lasted 13 games. And then in 2020, he only lasted 12. And then there's the elephant in the room, which was the looming 5th-year option, totaling almost $19 million. So you gotta think about it. You have a new regime coming in who didn't draft Sam. They see the flaws, they see the durability issues, and they see that looming 5th-year option coming up, and they decided it just wasn't worth the risk. And with that perspective, it does seem a bit understandable why they moved on. But in hindsight, not so much. So this much is clear. Sam was a QB who at the time in 2020 had a lot of flaws, but simply needed more talent around him, better coaching, and to develop better habits. But now that we've got reality out of the way, what about that fantasy? What kind of things would have changed if the Jets never traded Sam Darnold? Well, let's get into it. Now, I want to set some ground rules for this section, as I'll be looking at mainly key moments that would change if Sam Darnold was never traded. Now, I'll be going through each season from 2021 up until now, where I'll be focusing on the draft, but only with the key players, not every single draft pick. I'll also be focusing on how it affects the talent on the team, as well as the coaching staff. And finally, I will also be predicting the amount of wins that the Jets will have in each season. And a final key note is going to be the injuries, where if there's a player on the Jets that suffered an injury in real life during this time span, then that injury will also happen in this alternate universe. So let's get started with 2021, where the biggest change, in my opinion, will be the fact that we don't have to deal with this bullshit. Now, whether they kept Sam or not, the Jets will still be picking at the number 2 pick. Now, let's bring up 2 talking points that have been discussed in certain spaces online, where the Jets could have stayed pat at the number 2 pick and selected someone like Penei Sewell. Now, the other scenario would have been if they traded back with the 49ers. Now, if you do remember, the 49ers traded up with Miami to the 3rd pick in order to get Trey Lance. And it was rumored that they were trying to trade up with the Jets. And in our alternate universe, we're actually going to accept this trade. Now, what did this trade package include? Well, in real life, the 49ers gave up the number 12 pick, the number 123rd pick, and a first rounder in 2022 and 2023. Now, the Dolphins did mess around and make some other trades after this, but in this case, we're not going to do that. And you'll see why in just a second. Now, after this trade, the Jets now own the number 12 pick, and it just so happens that there's a superstar player waiting right there. See, in real life, after the Dolphins and Eagles made more moves, it was actually the Cowboys that ended up with the number 12 pick. And who did they end up with? A man by the name of Micah Parsons, which is absolutely perfect for a Jets team that needs some serious help at the edge position. Not to mention, new head coach Robert Saleh was implementing a 4-3 scheme. Now, in this draft, the Jets still have their same picks, so I still do believe that they trade back up into the first round to get Elijah Vera Tucker. Now, I do understand that AVT is injury prone, but I don't want to go too crazy and make it seem like the Jets are going to select everything perfectly. And in reality, it's perfectly feasible to think that the Jets would take AVT in this position, as they do need some upgrades on the offensive line. And for the rest of this draft, I'm gonna keep the Jets selections the same. So they still end up with Elijah Moore, they still get Michael Carter II, they still get Jason Pinnock, and they still get a good depth corner in Brandon Echols. We're also not gonna change anything in terms of free agency. So how will the regular season play out in this scenario? Well, there's a couple of notes that we have to discuss. For one, Mekhi Becton ends up getting injured in real life in the first week of the season against the Carolina Panthers. So as promised, that season-ending injury will happen in our alternate universe. Another note is that under Mike LaFleur, QBs not named Zach Wilson tended to perform extremely well. So there's no reason to believe that this couldn't happen with Sam Darnold. And I'm going to predict that the Jets win 8 games this year, as the defense with Micah Parsons would perform better than how god-awful they were in real life. And the offense with no Zach Wilson will also take a big step forward. Now, this won't be enough to end the playoff drought, but it's a big step forward from the previous year, which brings us to 2022. See, this was the one draft that Joe Douglas actually got right, where he got some absolute studs in Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Jermaine Johnson, and Breece Hall. However, in this universe, due to the fact that they won 8 games instead of 4, the Jets do not have the number 4 overall pick, which unfortunately means no Sauce Gardner. See, in this scenario, the Jets would actually be picking around 12 or 13, and there would be some talented players there, and I do have the Jets going this time with Tyler Linderbaum, as Joe Douglas, who boasts about building through the trenches, would love to add on more to this offensive line to help protect Sam. Now, one thing would remain the same, as the Jets would keep the number 10 pick that they got in the Jamal Adams trade, meaning that they still have Garrett Wilson. However, there will be a change when it comes to Jermaine Johnson. Remember that 49ers trade from the previous draft? Well, the Jets would own the 29th overall pick as a result of them obtaining the 2022 first round pick from the San Francisco 49ers. And because of this, the Jets had no need to trade back into the first round for Jermaine Johnson. So instead, they grab another defensive end by the name of George Karlaftis. Now, they do lose out on Breece due to the fact that their second round pick is now later in the draft. And there would be some great prospects around this range, as they could have gone the safety route with Jaquan Brisker or the running back route with James Cook. But instead, we're going to go with a guy that the Jets had as a high priority tight end prospect in this draft, Trey McBride. So the Jets would now have some offensive weapons in Garrett Wilson and Trey McBride. They would also have an offensive line featuring Mekhi Becton, Tyler Linderbaum, and AVT. And on defense, they still pick up DJ Reed in free agency. They still have Micah Parsons. They pick up George Karlaftis. Still have Quinnen Williams. And some other studs on the defense, with the main change being not having Sauce Gardner. And before I forget, the Jets also extended Sam Darnold due to his improved play. So with all of that being said, how would the Jets perform during the 2022 season? Well, as in real life, the injury bug would hit the offensive line, as Mekhi Becton would suffer a season-ending injury before the season even started, and Elijah Vera-Tucker would suffer a torn Achilles against the Denver Broncos. Also, just like in real life, Sam Darnold would begin the season on IR. But in real life, this team did win 7 games, even with shitty quarterback play and less talent on offense. So even with the offensive line injuries and the injury to Sam Darnold, I do have the Jets winning 10 games this season, which in this case meant that they would replace the Miami Dolphins in the playoffs and unfortunately still end up losing to the Buffalo Bills. Which brings us to 2023, where the biggest change, of course, is that the Jets would no longer have the need to trade for Aaron Rodgers. Now, this change would actually have a ripple effect on the roster as well as the coaches. As with the success of Mike LaFleur and the trade for Aaron Rodgers not happening, there also would be no need to hire Nathaniel Hackett. This also meant that there was no need to sign certain free agents, such as Allen Lazard, Randall Cobb, Tim Boyle, and Dalvin Cook. Now, what would this mean for the draft? Well, originally the Jets had the number 13 pick, which they traded to Green Bay for the number 15 pick, and with that pick they selected Will McDonald. However, due to the fact that they had 10 wins, they would now be picking in the 19 to 20 range, which means that we can finally right the wrongs of this draft, as the Jets this time do what they should have done in the first place, and they select JSN. They also didn't have to trade Elijah Moore in this scenario, but they lose out on Joe Tippmann as their second round pick is now later in the draft. So instead they select another offensive lineman, Osiris Torrance. Now the Jets would own the 49ers first round pick here due to that 2021 draft day trade. And with that pick, they would get some help on cornerback where they would draft Joey Porter Jr. And now that we've got the draft out of the way, let's get into some predictions. But before we do that, we also got to talk about the injuries. And unfortunately with AVT, he once again suffers a season-ending injury in Denver against the Broncos. But even with that injury, with weapons such as JSN, Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Trey McBride, and with the studs that they have on defense, I do have the Jets winning 11 games this year, which once again meant that they would replace the Miami Dolphins in the playoffs. And once again, the Jets would lose this game as they would face off against Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. So back-to-back playoff appearances that unfortunately end in the wildcard round. And now we get to the 2024 season, where in the real world, this season pissed me the hell off. See, this season had us truly baffled, where Jets content creators were crashing out online and I was suddenly questioning my Jets fandom and my sanity. As this season, we would have a healthy Aaron Rodgers, and we would even get Devontae Adams around the trade deadline. But somehow, some way, this team finished with 5 wins. But how would it play out in this alternate universe? Well, as we know, there's no Aaron Rodgers, no Nathaniel Hackett, no Allen Lazard, and that would also mean no Devontae Adams trade. So what about the draft? Well, the most obvious change would be the fact that we would not get Olu Fashanu, as the Jets would have too many wins in the previous season to be picking that high. So instead they pick at 21, where they would end up drafting defensive tackle Byron Murphy II. See, in real life, Joe Douglas really screwed up by completely ignoring the interior defensive line. So in this alternate universe, we're not going to do that. Now we would still sign John Simpson, but unfortunately we do still have to keep Mekhi Becton, as there just wasn't enough options out there. So how would this season play out for the Jets? Well, as usual, we do have to look at injuries, and one major injury that we're going to see is with Micah Parsons. Now, it wouldn't be season ending, but he would miss a few games due to a high ankle sprain. And since we didn't draft Jermaine Johnson, we do get to avoid his Achilles injury during this season. Also, some more good news, AVT remains relatively healthy this season. Now, the Jets' schedule wasn't the easiest, but with the injury luck and the overall improvement of the team, along with Sam Darnold's ascension into elite status, I actually have the Jets winning the division with 14 wins. Now, I know it might just be the Jets' bias, but I really do believe that with the talent that this team has, they have the potential to do exactly what I just said. And in this scenario, I have the Jets going the Buffalo Bills route, beating Denver in the first round, beating Baltimore in the second, and ultimately losing to Kansas City in the AFC Championship game. Now, I just might have gone off the deep end, predicting so much success for the Jets, but fuck it, I'm a fan at the end of the day. Now let's move on and see what happens in 2025. Now, with the success of that 2024 season, the obvious change in the draft is that the Jets do miss out on Armand Membu, as I do have the Jets picking at the 29th spot. But there just so happens to be an offensive tackle waiting for the Jets at the 29th pick, where I have them selecting Josh Carnerly. Another change is that the Jets do not get Mason Taylor, but honestly they don't need him since they already have Trey McBride. Now, another big change that happens is that the Jets get to avoid having to hire Aaron Glenn. So none of this.
We're the freaking New York Jets, so we're built for this shit.
No 3-win season, no mention of going the entire season without an interception, none of that other crap that we had to deal with this past season. But there would be some negatives, as this season would actually have a lot of key injuries. One of the biggest injuries is going to be the fact that Micah Parsons, just like in real life, would tear his ACL. Elijah Vera Tucker will once again tear his triceps, ending his 2025 season. And finally, Garrett Wilson does end up injuring his knee. Now, I know in real life that the Jets did shut him down for the rest of the season, but that was mainly because they were already tanking. But in this scenario, we're going to have Garrett Wilson come back for the playoffs. As even with those injuries, I have the Jets winning 11 games. And I'll have them going the Texans route, where they'll beat the Steelers in the playoffs. But the change that I'm going to make, and maybe it's a little biased, I do have them beating the New England Patriots. And that's simply because the quarterback play and the overall offensive talent is going to be better than what CJ Stroud and the Texans put out in the playoffs. And in the AFC Championship against the Denver Broncos, I actually do have them making the Super Bowl, as I do think that the Jets in this scenario have much better offensive pieces than what the Patriots would have had, and I do believe they'll have better quarterback play. Now, in the Super Bowl, I don't have them facing the Seahawks because, of course, Sam Darnold is now with the Jets. So in their place, I have the LA Rams. Now, do the Jets win their first Super Bowl since 1969? No. Now, I do have this game being a shootout, with Stafford and the Rams pulling it out at the end. Now, this prediction could have gone either way, to be honest, but at the end of the day, this just shows the amount of success that the Jets could have potentially had if they had just kept Sam Darnold. We see the fact that the Jets could have had a lot more success, had better talent, break the playoff drought, hell, even make a Super Bowl, and even potentially win it. We see the fact that the Jets could have held on to a good offensive coordinator in Mike LaFleur. We see that they could have avoided the Zach Wilson disaster. We see that perhaps the media would have a lot more respect for the Jets now. And imagine the impact this could have had on the fans. Imagine that home field atmosphere. See, Jets fans are loyal as it is, but can you imagine if this team was actually successful? Hell, even this moron could have been viewed as a better owner. But the sad part is, we'll never know with Sam. We'll never know what kind of success the Jets could have had, or if it just ultimately would have never worked out. And now we're left with watching him potentially win a ring for another franchise. And all we're left with is hope. Hope that this franchise could turn it around. Hope that this new regime can figure it out. Simply hope. Now, even though there's a good chance that a lot of what I mentioned wouldn't happen, this was still a fun topic to dive into. And I'm thinking about making this into a whole series, so let me know if that's something you're interested in. And I also want to do a quick shout out to everyone that voted on that poll that I posted, as it helped make this video a reality. And I did notice that there were 2 other topics on that poll that people voted for, so be on the lookout for those videos as well. But yeah, let me know if you agree or disagree with anything that I mentioned in this video. Also, is there a change that would have happened that I might have missed? How would it have played out in your universe if the Jets had kept Sam Darnold? And of course, if you've made it this far and you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more to help this channel grow. Also, if any of the videos on the screen pique your interest, go ahead and check it out. And as always, thank you for hanging with me today. It's Dre, and these have been my thoughts. Until next time.